the effect upon the new mobility market was devastating. And for the first time ever, the once so successful and powerful disruptors were being disrupted themselves. Hi, I'm Tom, and today I'm talking to you about mobility in a pandemic world. Now, if you want to understand mobility in a pandemic world, you first need to appreciate the rapid growth of so-called new mobility. It all effectively started with the rise of the smartphone back in 2010. In 2010, Uber started with its business model as we know it today. Lyft followed very closely after that, but others like Zipcar have been around since 2000. So this then rapidly led to MaaS startups spreading around the world. And so for a decade, effectively, these new disruptors could do no wrong and went from strength to strength, capturing much mobility market share from traditional taxis, rental cars, as well as public transit. Now, our research has shown that in key markets around the world in 2016, the MaaS fleet achieved 1 million vehicles in operation. And by 2020, it should have been about 3 million vehicle fleet, with a long-term expectation for the MaaS sector to hit up to 16 million vehicle fleet by 2030. Then COVID-19 hit, and all of the forecasts were thrown out of the window. The world was plunged into previously unimaginable pandemic. Countries went into lockdown, some even multiple times. And consumers started to become uncomfortable about the sharing economy and new mobility. So effectively, the pandemic and the associated government guidelines of social distancing have highlighted that personal distance rapidly became a key factor in choosing what transportation mode people wanted to take. And any other mode that offered less personal distance, like public transit and ride-hailing, was perceived as offering less virus safety, and demand collapsed. Leading ride-hailing companies around the world reported trip requests that were down by 80 to 85%, while public transit operators around the world experienced declines of about 90%. So this new normal situation was also unique due to the fact that this was the first crisis ever where the mobility demand decline could almost be tracked in real time due to the sharing of indicator data by tech companies such as Google, Apple, and their mobility data. And you know, when mindsets really change, when it became apparent that suddenly millennials became interested in buying their own car, simply because a privately owned car offers the most safety from the virus, and it became people's protective cocoon. Now, we estimate that this demand could contribute up to 2.5 million new vehicle sales in 2020 alone. Overall, the effect upon the new mobility market was devastating. And for the first time ever, the once so successful and powerful disruptors were being disrupted themselves. And they struggled how to respond to this invisible threat. Right now, many of these disruptors are effectively on life support, and they are frantically looking for solutions that can help them turn this corner and get back on track to future growth. So what is likely to happen to new mobility in the post-pandemic world? Well, that situation remains very fluid for now. But we have already learned from the pandemic that mobility mode preferences has changed. We saw a preference towards privately owned cars, micromobility, cycling, as well as walking. While our cities have also responded by making it easier, cleaner, and safer for people to walk, cycle, and just generally enjoy public spaces. And some of these new measures put in place by these cities were effectively aimed at reducing privately owned car usage in our congested city. So in other words, will we move from a car-centric city to a human-centered city? But the pandemic's global economic impact could likely still be felt for several years, and that could potentially make privately owned cars and electric cars less affordable for consumers. A situation like that could then potentially make it harder for vehicle manufacturers to sell more electric vehicles in order to achieve stringent emission targets. It almost feels like new mobility will have to make a comeback to assist in bridging that compliance gap and offer efficient, on-demand, clean solutions. But given the ubiquity of public transit networks in Europe, it is almost inevitable that public transit will experience a revival, although slowly. However, in the US, there is a real risk that the pandemic might have solidified the marginalization of public transit as a trusted mode of mobility. So overall, it would appear that the future mobility outlook remains very complex, with likely differing regional solutions and consumer preferences. One could say that the pandemic has emphasized the need to maintain a wide range of alternative future plans, as it's all about preparedness and readiness, so we can act more quickly and decisively when the next unexpected crisis hits. Now, I'd love to hear your views, but for now, thanks for listening and take care.